All right, the college football playoff is here. We're starting with the first semifinal game on New Year's Eve. We got TCU taking on Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl out there in Arizona. Michigan is a 7.5-point favorite. That has stayed pretty steady throughout the week. Total is between 58.5, depending on where you look. I'm not really going to look at this game from a total perspective, but I do have an official play on this game. Give me the Wolverines minus the 7.5 is an official one-unit play. It's been a great run for TCU. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I have had success betting against the Horned Frogs this year. Faded them when they played at Baylor late in the season. They won, but they didn't cover. And then I also took Kansas State in the Big 12 championship. And we know how that worked out. Ultimately, and I've gotten criticism for saying this in the past, but it's worked for me. I'm not jumping off of it. This offense is very explosive. That's really what they're built on. That's why they're here. I wouldn't say they're overly consistent. I mean, their quarterback, Max Duggan, 9-yard per attempt guy. He is great in the deep passing game with him and Quentin Johnson and some of those outside receivers they got there in Fort Worth. Very explosive passing game. But when Duggan gets into the short intermediate range, his effectiveness plummets. I mean, he's a boom or bust kind of guy, and it's worked, and it's going to work against a lot of TCU schedule. But this is just a different animal. I mean, you saw how Michigan really kind of took Sean Clifford out of the game when the Wolverines played Penn State. They also limited some of that explosiveness from CJ Stroud and they played Ohio State. I've seen enough from the Wolverines secondary this year to where I don't think they're going to consistently get beat deep. They're going to make TCU and Duggan take some of those short to intermediate throws. That's not what Duggan wants to do. That's not how this TCU offense got here. I don't think Duggan's going to have one of his better days of the season. It really kind of applies to that TCU run game as well. It seems like every week, Kendry Miller's got a 50-plus yard run, and that's great. Explosive plays matter, but it's a little bit misleading. I think he is a bit overrated because of that. And when you're going up against this good of a run defense like Michigan, I just don't see TCU being able to consistently sustain drives. And with a disadvantage they're going to have on the other side of the ball, I think that's going to be necessary for him to stay in this game. I wouldn't say Michigan's pass rush is great. I still would give them the advantage going up against this TCU offensive line. On the other side, I mean, we've seen TCU's defense step up big time in some of their bigger matchups. I mean, when they played Texas, they were like an 8-point dog in that game. I mean, they totally took out Bijan Robinson. I mean, I think he had 29 yards on the ground. With that said, that seems to have kind of been a one-off performance because really every other high-level back they played did have success against the Horned Frogs, like a Deuce Vaughn. Secondary is kind of similar. I mean, Blake Shapen threw for 9 yards per attempt against this unit. And the first time TCU played Kansas State, Will Howard came in cold off the bench and pretty much torched this TCU defense early in that game. Michigan is not some sexy offense. They're a run-heavy team. Obviously, no Blake Corum in this game, but Donovan Edwards is over 7 yards per carry on the year. Really good back. They will have the advantage once again in the trenches in this matchup. I do think ultimately Michigan will wear out TCU in the run game, and I think that opens up the ability for J.J. McCarthy to take advantage of some of those one-on-one matchups. He hasn't really been given the full reins to the offense yet. Like I said, not really a sexy offense, but it is pretty effective. And when you can consistently run the ball like Michigan can, it's going to make your quarterback's life a lot easier. Give TCU all the credit for getting to this point. But I do think with this month layover, not having that momentum they had built really over the course of the season, I do think this is ultimately the spot where they fall. Michigan's just a more physical team up front on both sides of the ball. I wouldn't be surprised at all if TCU, maybe comes out hot, connects on some of those explosive plays because they've done it all year. But over the course of a 16-minute game, I do think Michigan pulls away and wins this game by double digits. So Michigan minus 7.5 is an official one-unit play for me.